Hi, I'm Congressman Tom Cole. This is another one of our weekly chats on what's happening in Congress. Actually, right now, Congress isn't in session, but frankly, the Appropriations Committee, on which I serve as a senior member, is very much at work. We've been here all week in Washington, D.C., first meeting in the 12 subcommittees that mark up major legislation to report to the full committee. And since yesterday, the full committee itself has been marking up the bills that actually fund the government. We've passed 5 of them so far, and they've been largely along party lines. There's a lot of good things in these bills, but there's also some policy differences between the two parties, certainly some spending and funding differences and differences of priority. But this is important work. And frankly, you try to get as many things in these bills that are important to your district, your state, and the constituencies that you're associated with. And you know that the bill is going to change a great deal over the course of the legislative process. The Senate is doing similar things, although the Appropriations Committee isn't formally meeting. And eventually the two bodies will produce bills and go to conference and try to sort out the differences. That's when the real work begins, and sense of the hard compromises, because you have to come out of a conference with exactly the same bill for the House and the Senate agreed upon, and then get it passed again, and of course get the president to sign it or have sufficient votes to override his veto. And in this case, there's no way that a Republican Senate in particular is going to override the veto of a Republican president. They'll be supportive. So there's a lot of negotiation between the House, between the Senate, and with the administration, even in the process at this early stage. But it's moving pretty well. Again, there'll be a lot of bills ready for Congress to consider when it comes back week after next into normal session. This week was also a pretty important week in Oklahoma because of something called the McGirt Decision. That was a decision by the Supreme Court of the United States that the original reservations of the 5 civilized tribes, as they were called then, 5 tribes as they're called now, are still intact as reservations, even though there's individual land ownership. This has some really interesting and complex jurisdictional questions, and it's going to lead to some debates. But establishing that the 5 largest tribes in the state, who comprise about 75% of the native population, never lost their reservations, is extremely important to them, and they were united in that. Fortunately, we have a good history in Oklahoma of the tribes in the state working together in recent years. And we have literally hundreds of agreements back and forth between tribal governments and the state government of Oklahoma to work together. Indeed, before this decision came down, our Attorney General, Mike Hunter, and various representatives of the 5 tribes had already been meeting and working toward a common statement of principles and to work out any jurisdictional disagreements or disputes. So this is going to be tricky, but it's important to the long-term health and the relationship between tribal governments, which are a big part of our history and big employers, big players in our state, and the state government. So I feel pretty comfortable that the two parties will come together. We may at some point need federal legislation to codify whatever agreements are made. Both Senator Inhofe and Senator Langford issued statements that they looked forward to working with the tribes and the state government to settle anything. All of us in the House delegation, Republican and Democrat alike, from various parts of the state, did the same thing. And so what our hope is that there'll be agreement in Oklahoma between the tribes and the state government. Then we will take that agreement and pass whatever legislation that needs to be done. We're not going to try and dictate things from Washington, D.C. That'd be an enormous mistake. This is an issue for tribal governments and the state government to work out between themselves and the federal delegation, then to provide the federal framework for any legislation that needs to happen in terms of agreements between those two. But we won't be taking sides in the fight. We'll just be trying to make sure there's not a fight, there's a good negotiation, and the problems are worked through. So I suspect you'll hear more about this in the days and weeks ahead. Let me just end with this. we're certainly, as a country, going through a very, very difficult time. We've got the coronavirus, we have the economic fallout from that, and of course we've had the awful social disturbances associated with the horrific killing of George Floyd, and so it's a difficult time in our country. I would just ask you to, number one, when it comes to your own health, be safe. Listen to the instructions that have been given by our healthcare officials. Mask when appropriate, do the social distancing, wash your hands. We're making very rapid progress on a vaccine, extraordinarily rapid progress. But that we still have to get through the next several months. Second, I will tell you that on the economy, it seems to be healing a little bit faster than most of us thought it would. But we're going to continue to work on it. And we think Congress will probably do one more coronavirus supplemental. And certainly we're going to do everything we can to make sure that you and your family are safe and get through this, and that our businesses can open and people's jobs are secure. Finally, we're dealing with a very difficult issue, the issue of race and the issue of identity in American politics right now. Just remember, whatever our differences, whatever our history, whatever tragedies have happened in the past, and there certainly have been some, America's been a great and a good country from its very inception, and it's gotten better. We've not ever completely lived up to our ideals, but we've moved closer to them. I know that. I'm old enough to have seen it happen in my lifetime. So be kind to your fellow Americans. Remember, we all have different backgrounds, different histories, different challenges. Remember that the country isn't perfect, but it's gotten better. And try to make a positive contribution in both the dialogue about some of the complexities and difficulties of our history, and now we can work together as a people. When America is together, when we're all working toward the same goal, we're absolutely undefeatable. This is a good country, and people come here from all over the world for a reason. And they come because it's the freest place in the world, it's the place with the most opportunity in the world, and it's the place that has proven time and time again that its people can and will become better, and can and will work toward a more perfect union. So in this month of our independence, let's rededicate ourselves to that goal, just as the very first Americans did, and recognize that we're on a journey, a long journey to be sure, but a journey in which the country has gotten better and can get better still if we work together. Good luck. God bless.